Hi, I'm Ashley.
I am Neil. So we're talking about Five Bloods today.
Are we? I feel like that's what we are.
Um, I think that one of the perspectives that I watched this movie through heavily was an anxiety perspective and like a PTSD perspective.
Definitely. The PTSD perspective got me good because I was sitting here
Mhm.
like, oh my god, this is giving me PTSD thinking about everything that happened to them. They kept flashing back and forth between past and present. There was this one transition where it went from like normal to widescreen and then right back to normal. I was like, this is beautiful.
Mhm.
Spike Lee, you knew what you were doing.
Did anyone else like the entire time think about or honestly watch it through the lens that Chadwick has just died? Like I feel like even like I forgot who said it. I think it was Otis when he was like he was the best soldier that ever lived. And it showed a scene of like Norm yelling at the men, telling them to stand down, and Paul says he won't. And Norman goes like, "I feel like you'll have to kill me first." And I feel like it kind of, in a way, represented Chadwick not letting anything get in the way of his career.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Coming from like a point of view where like Chadwick was honestly like one of the people I looked up to, then watching this movie where he's already passed, I was like, this feels like real life right now because I'm seeing like the amazing person that he is, and then remembering everything from the past, and then knowing that this was one of his last movies too, and that he was struggling with colon cancer at the time and decided he was going to continue to go forth and like act and do everything that he loved doing regardless of literally dying.
Yeah. I feel like it adds to the kind of mystique of Norman as a character
Mm-hmm.
too. Because like he's kind of this mysterious guy, like, oh, he died all these years ago and they can't find his body. He's this like legend in their eyes. And I was like, this is it just is Chadwick Boseman, you know what I mean?
And like honestly, I thought that the movie was going to be all of their relationships with Norman, only because of the way that the movie was introduced. Like it was four guys that were going to find their fallen friend. But then I kind of realized when they were on the boat that a lot of this was going to be through context within the perspective of Norman's relationship with Paul,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was honestly like a very interesting turn for me towards the beginning of the movie as opposed to like the middle.
Yeah, and at the beginning, there's a whole lot of scenes where it's framed and it's just the four of them in a row. And it wasn't always like super obvious that that was what it was doing, but like repeatedly, I noticed that it was always lining up the four of them, like in that photo that they flashed at the very beginning. But then as the movie continues on, we kind of see less and less of that as they sort of are less of this unified group, and it kind of becomes more about their individual struggles.
Can I just be the first to say that that scene where they're dancing in the nightclub brought me so much joy. I thought that was so funny. I didn't read anything about this movie before we started, so I didn't know that like when what's his name when Eddie blows up, I knew something bad was gonna happen. I was like, this doesn't look good. This is like the way
Yeah.
he's backing up.
Yeah,
But up until
exactly.
then, I was like, I don't know if this is like I don't know, not a feel good movie, but I was like, this doesn't feel like something terrible is gonna happen, and it did.
You know what's funny about that scene is like I kept like tilting my screen down and I was like, oh, I guess this isn't because he stops and then he starts walking back further as he keeps talking. And then once it explodes, I thought that he literally like every part of him was like imploded. So I didn't think he was going to be there at the end of it. So I was like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And then right after, like as soon as I thought that, like obviously we know what happened. And I paused and I literally had to like go on a walk.
Yeah, I had to stop. I had like 45 minutes left. And and then I came back and I was like, okay, gonna restart. It's gonna be okay. Like, power through.
Oh,
All dies. And I was like, just kidding.
I saw the landmine coming. I was like, there's no
Really?
way that they mentioned this woman in the
Uh,
beginning about the landmines for them not to step on one. I was like, this has to come back. And I was like, the way he's backing up, something gonna happen to him. he gonna step on it, isn't he? And I was like, boom, there it is. Like, I saw it coming. They couldn't get me there. But when they showed his body, I was like, so he's still bleeding,
So
huh?
bad. It was
Can
so-
we not see this?
I read this article from RogerEbert.com. I have no idea its credentials. It was a good article though. And it was talking about how it kind of falls in, like, this movie has a lot of tropes in it, but then also is incredibly poignant at particular moments. And there was one line that I was like, oh shit. And it's, the left hand lures you in with the familiar before the right hand blindsides you with the unexpected punching power of the intended point. And I felt like that was what happened with this movie just over and over again. Like, they're dancing with the gold and they're like joking around and it's like a fun time and I'm like laughing with them. And then all of a sudden they're digging up Norman with their bare hands. And you're like, oh my God.
I
The
think
movie
for
kept taking
me,
turns.
sorry.
I was saying the movie kept taking turns like every few seconds.
Yeah, and I feel like for me, like parts of this, actually most of this, wasn't relatable. But it's funny that you mentioned, because honestly, like I don't know what that was like, like I feel like being in that kind of environment and then having to go back in order to find your fallen friend, like I just couldn't relate to that. Although, like, it's funny that you mentioned the part where they're dancing around with the gold, because the first thing, and I'm sure you guys will feel the same way, the first thing that I thought of was like, that's literally how I was when I got my first A on a paper in this class. Like,
Yeah.
that was the one part of the movie I was like, that's where I relate.
Yeah, I was afraid that Otis was gonna get blown up in that scene. I was like, I was that was another scene where I was like, this is going on for so long, and he keeps finding gold. I'm like, one of these is gonna be a mine. I was just waiting for it,
Oh,
because
really?
Yeah.
what's his name? David, he found it and he was like jumping up and around and he was like talking about how happy he was. I was like, his celebration is going on a little too long where I feel like it's gonna get cut short by something, and it never did.
Mhm.
There's a few scenes where it goes on for so long where it feels like it's building up tension, but it isn't,
And I almost feel like
Yeah.
that makes it worse in the end because
Yeah.
it's not when you're expecting it. It's then later on after you've kind of been like, well, I guess that isn't going to happen. And then it does happen.
How did you guys feel about each character's death? Like in relation to the timing of the movie and like where the other characters were at that time. Like, I think Paul's death was for me something that I had trouble with, only because like I really, really thought that Paul was going to come back and talk to David. Like, I think their relationship was kind of a big part in terms of David's character development and Paul's character development. So I felt as though like that death kind of cut me short, and I was like, oh, they're not going to be able to talk again.
It was like life though. If you really think about
That's
it,
true.
like Paul, the way he died was very traumatic, and David's still gonna always be in this space where it's like I never actually got to build that relationship with my father the way I wanted. Just like how like Paul never really got over Norman dying. It's like they're both stuck in this state of trauma.
I think the hardest part of Paul's death too was that it came right after that scene
Yeah.
with Norman, and it was just, that was such like a harrowing moment of him being there and being like, it was a mistake, like I forgive you, it was an accident, like it's okay, and he's just sobbing, and like you're just feeling that so strongly.
I cried so hard. Ouch.
See, for
Yeah.
me, like it was really sad, but I feel like in my life I'm so used to seeing people of color dying that like even though it's sad, it's something that I've kind of, built up a tolerance for, even though I shouldn't have.
Have any of you guys seen Apocalypse Now?
Mm-mm.
Do you guys know what it is?
Mm.
You guys don't know what Apocalypse Now is?
No.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you know how so when they go to the nightclub, behind the DJ it says Apocalypse Now, and when they get on the boat, it plays Flight of the Valkyries, which is that
Yeah.
orchestral song. So those are two references to the film Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford Coppola, and that's about a guy who's sent to assassinate a rogue sergeant or colonel, I think. Uh, he goes down this long river, and it kind of makes him go a little bit insane. And so I found it really interesting how he kept kind of going back to that, because it's about Vietnam, and they're on the boat that they're in at the beginning going down that river, and it's playing music from the movie about a boat on a river. And I thought that was kind of interesting how he kind of kept calling back to that. And if you guys haven't, you should really watch it. It's a great movie. If you like this movie, you should watch Apocalypse Now.
I think for me, like, because after I watched this movie, I tried to think of why I liked it so much, because usually, I mean, it was a lot to watch, and I didn't really understand why I enjoyed watching it so much at the end, just because it was quite violent. But I genuinely believe that, like, each relationship, not as a group, but their tie with one another, and the development throughout the movie for me was what made it. And like, I think having David with them was the crucial element that made it family. Only because clearly, like, they were all adults and they have been through a lot of real shit that Vietnam brought to them. So I thought Lee's addition of David's character was highlighted a lot more than I feel as though other people might see it.
I feel like it definitely adds to the story, because when I first started the movie and you see everyone getting to the hotel and they're all happy, I was like, yay, a bunch of happy Black men. It's like just that brother feeling that you get from watching that. And I was like, this is amazing, because usually you don't get to see a lot of like older Black folk, because, you know, they're killed off in their youth. So I was like, yes, finally, happy old men. You know, it just makes me so happy. And then when David came, I was like, okay, so now we're seeing some tension built up, because just at the bar, they were like, oh yeah, I have a 18-year-old son, blah, 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 blah. And they're talking about their kids and everything. And then David appears and he's like, I don't want you here. Why are you here? Get out. And you see like the real feelings of the family.
Yeah.
And it shows so much into how they actually interact and how their relationships grow throughout the movie.
And that kind of happened too with Eddie, right? Like, he had this facade where he was rich and everyone thought he had money, and then you find out in the time where everyone was like vulnerable in the middle of a mountain, correct? Right? Like a dirt patch on a mountain. Like, I feel like a lot of their situations as characters in life's paralleled, like Otis learning that he has a daughter and having that kind of conflict his focus on the mission. And then after that, we find out that David's here, and that's Paul's son. So I feel like at the same time, like, although the characters are quite different, like, there were a lot of similarities that link them together.
Can we talk about Otis's daughter, though? She's so beautiful.
But I wish that, like, their relationship could have bloomed more, only because, like, Tien was a character at first. So I was like, oh, it's gonna be one of those things where they're, you know, like, they were lovers and blah blah blah, and it turns out that it just wasn't like that. It was quite platonic, honestly. So that was a little weird for me as well.
Yeah,
I love the side by side shot of them, and I honestly, like, I looked up if they were actually related, because, like, they have the same nose, they have the same, like, structure, like, they actually, like, you know what I mean, like, the resemblance was there. So that's why I thought initially that they put them side by side so prominently at the end, but I was wrong. He only has one son. So
I love that he brought, because I knew that the Spike Lee with the weird zoom, the dolly zoom was like a thing, and not in his other movie. But I was like kind of waiting a little bit the whole time to see where he was going to use it. And I feel like this was definitely interesting that he used that shot in like this happy, joyful moment, whereas last time it was this kind of horrifying, disorienting moment. And so to use the same technique for two very different scenes definitely made it kind of interesting.
This movie definitely had a lot of parallels to BlacKkKlansman. Like, if you've seen BlacKkKlansman, one of the like KKK members, like one of the most important ones, were in this movie. What was his name in the movie? Seppo.
oh,
He was in BlacKkKlansman. He was literally like one of the lead KKK members. And then in this movie, he's like, oh, blah, 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 the Klan, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, so y'all referencing your own movies now. I see it.
Well, and I saw that the actor that played Paul had been in 4 of Spike Lee's films, so maybe he just likes like he's kind of like Wes Anderson, where he uses recurring actors in order to create
Yeah.
some kind of like dynamic in the movie. But I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Usually he uses a different like main person, and then I guess he's using the
Ah.
same like side characters. But I felt like Seppo was like important to like this film, especially in Black Klansman. He was like one of the main important characters. So for him to use him again and then make references to the Klan, that was something like big, especially the Make America Great Again stuff in this movie. Because the way that I was like, oh my God, they're talking about Trump. Like, why are they talking about Trump? This wasn't set in today. Like, what is
Mhm.
this?
My favorite thing in that same article, there's a really good line. I'm not gonna be able to find it, so I'm just gonna have to paraphrase it. But they mentioned the Make America Great Again hat. And they're like, what's interesting? Oh, I found it. It says, Paul may be MAGA, and the red hat he wears in the jungle is an image ripe with shade. In parentheses, the hat went to Vietnam. Its symbolic representation stayed home. And like, I was like, okay, we didn't have to go that far. But like, now that we have,
Yeah, I think the moment that Jean Reno's character, what's his name?
Hirosh.
Deroche. The minute that he gets out of the car and puts that red hat on his head, that moment I like replayed it because I was like, hold on. And I think that moment, like that 2 seconds, had so much meaning to this movie as far as like where Paul stands in his experience in Vietnam and how that influenced and affected his life after. Only because we didn't really get much of their life prior to when they all met up at the resort. So
Can I bring something up about Deroche at the end of the movie? He's a white dude, and he's got a white suit on, and he puts on a MAGA hat. And you want to know what kind of gun he pulls out? He pulls out a Luger, which was a gun used by the Nazis during World War II. That is a
No.
staple Nazi gun. So I thought that was a very interesting choice, and it was definitely on purpose, um, because that's a gun that is aligned with this hateful group of people. And so I thought seeing him with the Make America Great Again hat with this handgun, I was like, that Spike Lee's driving the point home all right with that one. And he's shooting at black men too, you know? So it was definitely very, in a weird way, it comes back to problems in America nowadays.
This movie brought back so many problems of today, especially when like Paul was like, "Oh, this is why I voted for Trump," and I was like, first of all, what? And then all of his friends were like, "Oh, so you were that black guy standing behind Trump holding that blacks for Trump sign," and then like put that black dash over the guy's face. And Spike Lee always does that. He always puts like Trump supporters and white supremacists into his movie and just puts that one little black line where it's like you're just not seeing their eyes, but you kind of see their entire face anyways. And then when David was talking to Seppo and Hetty and all of them, he was like, no black person would ever vote for Trump, but his own father did, and he had no clue about that. And I thought that was like a huge statement in the movie. It's where it's like, you really don't know people.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting angle that the movie took, because there's a few times where that happens where you have Paul, who's a Trump supporter, which you would not expect at all, and then you have at the same time, like, you know, in America you see a lot of in that time period you can see a lot of like anti-Viet Cong sentiment, and you know, like just fear of those people. And they even had the guy trying to give him the chicken, kind of, you always hear as an American talking to somebody from Vietnam, but you never hear somebody from Vietnam yelling at an American guy for coming to his land and killing people. So I thought that was really interesting that Spike Lee chose to kind of do like a switcheroo on how
Feel
you
the
normally think
parallels.
about those kinds of conflicts, you know.
yeah, I thought honestly, Paul as a character was so interesting to me because we kind of open and he's wearing this Make America Great Again hat, and he makes the comment about like the wall, and you hate him, and you're like, what is he doing? Why is like I mean, I did, at least. I was like, what the heck is he on about? And then you see scenes like the one on the boat where he's like having this panic attack, and you're kind of in his head with him, and there's these close-up shots, and it's loud and it's chaotic, and he's scared, and I was getting overwhelmed, and I was with him. And I feel like it kind of wavered back and forth for me. I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but there were moments where I was totally with him and I was understanding his struggles, and I like felt so strongly for him. And then there'd be moments where I was like, what are you going on about? And like when he'd get mad at his son and he was like, he was like, you aren't my son if you won't tie these people up. And I was like, I was rooting for you. Why are you doing this?
No, the
I
part
felt-
right at the end where he was like, "Oh, that's not my son, that's a traitor." I was like, "But you guys are building a relationship, please."
I felt the same way, and then I kind of, because I was wavering back and forth as well, because I was really, really interested in his character as far as his relationships went. And then the scene where he like has his revelation of what actually happened to Norman, and when the camera's going like in and out when he's having like this PTSD episode, I feel like the camera movement really kind of conveyed how hectic it is when he does have those kinds of episodes. So that honestly made me feel bad for him. Like he obviously went through a shit ton of trauma.
I thought it was, I always, whenever he was being a jerk, I kept thinking back to the scene where he's talking to Otis at the bar, and he starts crying and he tells him that he's broken. That's kind of what I always thought back to. I was like, even though, there's a lot of people out there who we'll think are like crazy and have these like wild opinions, and they're still wrong, but you don't really know kind of what that person is like. And he's been through so much shit that it has broken him. So
And it also shows that like the way that the VA doesn't actually help the people who served, because they'll just prescribe Oxycontin and not care about like the side effects of people getting addicted to it, which they reference like 30 times in this movie. But they also don't support them with therapy, which is the main thing that the people who fight in our wars need. It's the main thing. Like they just need to talk it through with someone, because no one else knows what you experience in war. In Vietnam was one of the wars where society actually got to see all the violence, because it was right when TVs became a big thing. So it's the only war we can talk about. But who knows how bad it was during World War I and World War II, where it was not televised and we were not seeing all the rapes and the horror.
I think there's such a stigma around therapy in that generation as well. And I feel like things are changing, but I think that regardless of what anyone goes through, especially if you're going through something like that war, you should be able to talk about it to someone that has no connection to it whatsoever, that no one that was there, like not a friend, not a family member, not an acquaintance, like literally someone that you can just talk to with no repercussions, no consequences for what they're going to say back to you and listen to. So looking through that perspective, like you guys talking about that, I feel like I'm getting more revelations of that, because I didn't really see that as I was watching the movie as much as I am like right now.
I kind of thought it was interesting to see how they portrayed PTSD,
Mhm.
because I felt like in some moments it was very much like you were very much empathizing with him, but then kind of towards the end when he's like going through the jungle on his own and he's kind of like losing it a little bit, and like he's getting his foot caught and he's like caught like talking to himself, and he almost seemed kind of crazy. And I don't know, I was like, what? I was in that moment I was kind of confused as to what they were trying to say about PTSD, because in a few moments it didn't seem like they almost made it out to seem like he was a bad guy for going through it, which I don't think was the intention, but I definitely got some weird vibes from it at some points.
I feel like they were trying to say that it impacts everyone differently. Like it can make someone into a bad guy, which is what happened to Paul. It's like he turned into something bad from his PTSD, while Otis, he like worked through and was able to like live his life. Even though he's like in debt, he was able to live his life with it. And so were the other guys. But like they all struggle in their own way. It's like when the kid had these little like poppers and they all like hit the deck when they heard them. It's like they all still struggle with the same things, but they're dealing with it in different ways.
Yeah, I think when David was talking about his mom with Hetty, and that was revealed that his mom died at birth, and that's part of the reason why the relationship between David and Paul is really rough. I kind of honestly wish that he had brought that up earlier, only because I feel as though that would have changed my like upsetness towards Paul's death and how that all went about.
Yeah, I didn't know how to feel about that moment, to be honest, because in a way it kind of felt like a weird cop out use of a trope. Like I almost like there were so many things that could have caused conflict between David and Paul, and pulling that out of nowhere almost felt like like a weird thing to do. Like and especially considering how much they talked about politics, I feel like that could have been a big thing. Or really anything else, but I just really didn't see that coming. That wasn't at all what I expected to be the thing that pushes them apart.
I want to bring up something a little bit different that I don't know if you guys noticed. Well, you must have noticed, but it's kind of weird how Spike Lee sometimes changes. He makes like stark changes in the way that he has the shot set up. Like when they're all talking to David when he first showed up about like, you better not mess up. You're under like our command. And David is like, it's from like a high angle, and he's down. He looks like a little kid. He's got like a drink in his hand. He's got this little cap, and then everyone else is from below, and they all look like so tall. And I was like, what? Like I get it, but like that's such a weird choice to put in the middle of this when everything else is like so normal, you know. And sometimes he uses like really symmetrical shots where like it showed Chadwick Boseman walking up to the chest with the gold, and it was like perfect, like circled, and then there's Chadwick Boseman in the middle. So it's like kind of weird how he uses the camera in such strange ways sometimes, I feel like.
Yeah, I noticed that. And the other weird moment, I'm pretty sure at the very beginning, when they're all getting drinks, and there's the older Vietnamese men at the other table. I forget now exactly what it was, but he did some kind of weird shot that kind of paralleled the two groups. And once again, it was a whole bunch of men in a row, which is not usually how you sit in a restaurant, but he still had all of those guys lined up. And every now and then he would, like you said, pull out weird shots that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, he likes to bring out the symmetry every now and again.
There's this one shot like when it like flashed back to all of them fighting when their plane was like coming down to that like broken down plane on the ground. There's this one shot where it zooms in really fast and it's like, oh, we went too far. And like comes right back out a little bit. And I was like, so Spike Lee, definitely, he be doing this.
Yeah.
He always has some random shots.
Yeah. And sometimes he likes to do like 70s style, like how Quentin Tarantino does it, where he's got like the dramatic zooms and the stuff like that, and these like crazy camera movements. He just kind of pulls that out whenever he kind of feels like it, which is really interesting.
He likes to play with his shots.
Yeah, that's what it definitely feels like, that playing with it. That's the best way to say it.
But I feel like that was also super, super successful in this movie. Like it might have been very distracting, I feel like, in other films, but I feel like this movie was honestly perfect for it. And I think he also did a good job at adding in like musical elements that changed the mood as well, along like in relation to those camera movements. Like this scene where Hetty's cleaning David up after he's shot, and there's like this score that's playing that makes you feel bad for David because it's like representing the relationship between Paul and him. Whereas like if it was silent, I feel like you'd be more focused on like the fact that he's injured because his face was showing that he was in a lot of pain. So that's one thing I really enjoyed about this movie was his ability to like add in musical elements that changed the meaning of the scene, which was nice.
Yeah.
I also related to sound, but not to score. I thought so. A whole thing with perspective in the reading was talking about like the symbolic connotations of locations and how that can impact the story. And there's a scene when they're walking through the jungle and there's the cicadas and it's like overwhelmingly loud. And David's like, that's not what it sounds like at home. And Paul's like, we're not at home anymore. And it like, I just feel like there's so much, the fact that they're in the jungle obviously is necessary for the plot, but it has so much meaning to it, and it comes with so much more associated with it than if they were anywhere else. Like hearing the cicadas and seeing, you know, the scenes of the jungle, like you'd recognize where they are even if you didn't know where they are. And I feel like it adds to this kind of otherworldly, like not otherworldly, but this really interesting experience that they're having. And at some point, I'm pretty sure someone says like, welcome back, but like they never really left. Like they've always kind of had Vietnam as like part of them. And I don't know. So then to go back and then have it be such a overwhelming presence of a place was definitely interesting.
I feel like that was a really big part of the movie. Like I feel it's Paul especially that was manifested him in as a character, but I feel like those flashbacks, like that was part of all of their lives. And so now that you said, because wow, that was like, yeah, because that changed my whole perspective on the movie.
All right. Oh, I was just gonna say something off topic too. I really like those scenes with Hanoi Hannah, the radio lady.
Yes.
I don't know. I was like, there's something so like nice about listening to this lady talk, even though she was talking about the assassination of Martin Luther King. I don't know. Those like little inserts were kind of cool and unique. I liked that a lot because you
I
would just kind of
really
show up.
added to the movie.
One of my favorite parts was like when the motorcycle like zooms across the screen and then it like switches settings.
That was so weird.
That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, only because like it reminded me of that scene that we didn't watch this in class, but when I was looking up stuff on YouTube for the ghost dog assignment to find examples, it reminded me of this one. I don't know what movie it was. I think John Travolta was in the movie, but they were like all in a car and then like something zooms by across the screen. So that was like another one of my favorite parts of the movie. I really liked what he did with that because it made me like excited for what was to come. But
my favorite part was definitely the transition from like the past where this like the screen is like this to the present and just extends right like out and they're just walking into Vietnam, and I was like, who did this? Stop. You're getting me good, going from like I think it's we just went over this in class literally when we were going over that exam, the different screen lengths. I know it's like wide screen, normal, so I think it went from like wide to normal, or is it
went to 4:3, I think. I think that's the aspect ratio.
yeah.
But I thought that was so cool because that's a moment that reminds you that you're watching a movie, so it goes against the standard. Like, I forgot what it was called, the Hollywood, you know, we want you to forget that you're watching a movie.
seamlessness.
But that is what was it?
Seamlessness.
Yeah, and it just so like obviously draws your attention that the screen is closing, and you kind of remember that, oh, now this is like a memory, and it looks like a footage from Vietnam, which by the way, I was totally caught off guard at the beginning. That famous photo of the guy getting shot in Vietnam, I didn't know that had footage to it. So when it played the footage, I was like, that was a real guy.
Yeah.
That guy is actually dead. I was like, oh my God.
I couldn't tell if that was real footage or if that was, because I've never seen that before, and that was kind of horrific.
Yeah, I mean, I think that must have been original footage, because that would have had to put so much effort into remaking that, and it was so seamless that I think it must have been the real thing.
It definitely was.
Then there was the
real
baby
footage.
too.
It
was.
definitely
I
was
was like-
real footage.
Yeah, but there was like
We
all
always
those
use real
photos.
footage. Oops, sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm sorry.
Who was your guys' favorite character? Because mine was Melvin.
David.
Otis.
David was my second favorite. Who was yours, Amanda?
I don't know. I guess probably David. I don't know.
Damn, I'm just different than y'all. I said Otis.
But okay, why?
Why Otis? I just thought his
Mhm.
dynamic with all the like everyone else and like the way he just wanted to bring people together. He's like, come on guys, please, can we just be friends? Can we just be the Five Bloods like one last time and everything? You know, he just wanted everyone to be
I feel like
happy.
Eddie wasn't. I feel like Eddie wasn't like.
That
This
big of a
sounds so
character.
bad. Well, I just feel like he wasn't there long enough for us to like
Care about him when he
truly
died.
understand.
I 100%
Well,
agree.
that's the nicer way to put what I was gonna say. I was gonna say that he wasn't in the movie long enough for us to understand why he was like so prominent. But yes, we didn't care very much about him.
Nah, like I felt like you have to build up emotions for these characters so that when they die, it's like more impactful. So like when Paul dies, it's like you feel it because you've watched him the entire movie and then he dies. But Eddie, it's like they put it in a joking sense and you're like, I know something bad's gonna happen to him. So it's like you're already
Also,
just prepared.
it's also like for Paul, like I don't necessarily know what meaning would come out of it, but like there had to be some reason on why he was shot that many times. Like the excessiveness in that one scene. Like I was wondering that. I was like, I wonder why Spike Lee did that. I mean, he might have not even done it for like a specific reason. He might have done it just for like
It means
high
more.
intensity for the film.
Like,
Sorry.
one shot would mean that his death is nothing. If it's multiple shots, you feel more. You feel like shocked even more than if it's just like one bullet and they act like there's nothing really there. Like it adds more to the character when you're shooting them multiple times and you're seeing them like, oh, like you're seeing all of that.
I feel like Paul's death was in addition, like excessiveness gives it more of like fanfare, but I also think it was another reference because there's a scene very similar to that in a movie called Platoon that is also about
Yes.
Vietnam, where Willem Dafoe, he's like, it's kind of, I haven't, it's admittedly a little bit funny if you just see it without the context because the way he moves, but he's like this, he's like, "Ah," as he's getting shot, and it's like so dramatic, and it's very similar. So I feel like it's another like little like nugget that he kind of hides in there for people who kind of know know those kinds of things. Homage.
Yeah. Well, did you guys? A fun fact that I found out because like after I watched this, I like I don't even know why I did this honestly. Now that I think about it, I looked up Spike Lee's Wikipedia page. And the first student film that he ever made was at Morehouse College. And if you look at David's clothing throughout the movie, like he has the Morehouse hat in the scene, Neil, that you were talking about when the Five Bloods are talking to him about like don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
And he has like Morehouse shirts and everything like that. So I felt like that was like a little fun doing
So
in the
cute.
movie.
When they're bandaging him, he was saying the house because he's from that, because like when his dad was like hyping him up to get him off the mine, he was like, what school did you go to? The house, so they brought that up a lot.
Oh my god, that scene gave me so much anxiety.
Oh my god, the
I was-
anxiety. Like I knew he was gonna be okay, but I was like, can we not do this?
I was like this. I was like,
I had to like keep like tilting the screen down for like half of this movie. And I like turned the sound off.
yeah, I took my earbuds out a couple different times, and my roommate was like, "Are you good?" And I was like, "Yes."
The minute I heard Eddie screaming after
Oh my god.
the fact that I immediately I was like, absolutely not. You best believe that this is not. You know what I mean? It was just that scene to me was the most like because I like know when to close my eyes during movies. That was one of the first times in my life where I genuinely did not have time to close my eyes.
Yeah, that was probably the most gruesome part.
Yeah.
I thought it was just gonna be him gone. I did not expect
Me
from his
too.
screams or anything. And then when I saw his body there, and it's like he has no arms, and you just see the bone sticking out, and it's just spewing blood. I was like, please stop! I didn't need to see this. Like I already pictured the pain in my head. You didn't have to show it to me.
And honestly, part of me didn't think they were gonna find Norman. So even that, like he had gone there for the gold and he had gone there for Norman and him more than everyone else, when they were finding the gold, they were kind of like, Norman would have wanted us to have the gold, like they treated the body as something that was secondary, where for Paul, it was 100% his number one priority. And I think his influence as far as his priority on the gold was kind of through the group. So
Even though like finding Norman was Paul's main priority, he literally was the one that changed the most when they found the gold.
agreed, yeah.
Like Norman had said like, oh, like money changes people, like people go to war for money. Like that's the reason for war. And I 100% agree with that. We can go on the tangent and talk about war and money. But Paul, who listened to Norman the most, was like, no, I don't remember what he said about money. What are you talking about?
Mhm.
Because the second he saw the gold and he realized that he can have like a 10 times better life, that's what took priority, not all of the things that he and Norman had been through together, not everything that all the Five Bloods went through. It was just a complete change in character.
And I think subconsciously it was almost as though that was his solution to his PTSD, where he was like, oh, I have money, like that'll fix everything. Like if I have money, I have no reason to worry. I have no reason to have fear of what this world will present to me. So I really, although I didn't necessarily like Paul's character, I think I appreciated his character the most by a long shot compared to anyone
Definitely.
else in the movie.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, the development of him, and it was almost the realization, right? Like when we realized how bad it was. But at the beginning, I just saw him as this crazy old guy that was just mad at the world. But then as the movie goes on, I think Spike Lee did a really good job at making him that character where you want to hate, but you just can't.
Thanks
for watching.